You've probably heard the saying, they don't build homes like they used to, right? No matter which side of the argument you're on, that statement in itself is correct. Homes today are not built the way they were back then. For better or for worse, they just don't build them like they used to. But are we talking about style over substance when it comes to older homes, or is there something genuinely superior in the way that they were built? Today, we're going to deep dive into what makes these old homes so great and memorable, and we will consider some of the facts that might have been forgotten to time. Older homes have a charm that cannot be recreated, not only because the skills and materials may no longer even be available, but because these homes have a history, a story to tell through imperfections, creaks, and little tricks like pushing down on the doorknob when you close the door because it sticks, that give the home character. Buyers of older homes have an expectation that these nuances are what makes the home a home, and in their eyes, a sign of a well-loved home. These homes are time capsules from turn-of-the-century Victorian homes modeled after English Tudor society to understated American craftsman homes with hand-shaped wood moldings, or even mid-century homes that were designed to be simplistic and integrate with nature. All of these homes are time capsules telling the story of times past, and it shows the hopes and aspirations from the people that lived in these distinct times. Now, these homes were built by hand, meaning that each cut was made stroke by stroke and every nail hammered, meticulously set. Each stone even had to be hand-selected to perfectly fit. So builders took their time, they selected the right piece, and they did it right the first time. Today, caulk can hide a lot of mistakes when doing woodwork because we paint everything white. But back then, wood grain was visible. Therefore, trim was cut so tight, it would actually snap into place and it would stay there without nails. These homes were made to last forever, and time has shown us that many are still standing as strong as when the new neighbors first moved in. Now, I've collected antiques most of my life, and I too love the thought that older is better. The belief that today's homes are just thrown up overnight and you can't find the craftsmanship of yesteryear. But is it actually true, even though I want it to be? One of the first things to note is that there has always been junk. Our grandparents played with cardboard dolls, wore cardboard shoes, and had a lot of affordable options that were made to sell, but not necessarily made to last. They weren't that much different than us. In fact, when we look back on antiques, seeing the quality and craftsmanship, we forget to take into account that only the high quality stuff has survived. The junk has long ago been lost to landfills. Homes of all eras came in all types and qualities, and by and large, the best quality ones are the ones still standing today. Now in Kansas City, we have some of the most beautiful century homes in the entire country. Neighborhoods like Ward Parkway, Brookside, Scarrett Renaissance, Valentine have beautiful, enormous mansions. Each home is a unique piece of art, just like we can find in any era of construction. Wealthy people today build some of the most extravagant homes, and every year luxury gets pushed a little further and further upward. For every one of these homes, though, there are hundreds and hundreds of lesser quality homes now lost to time, fires, settlement, termites, and neglect. Even back then, homes were built in kits. Sears and Roebuck made homes in kits. They'd ship them right to you with every nail, every board, and every window you'd need, and it was up to you to frame it and put it together. No significant skill set was needed. Thousands of these homes are still here with us today, but of course, thousands of more have been lost to time and neglect. Homes built 100 years ago had a lot of beautiful finishes that are hard to find in construction today. Finding someone with the skill set to make custom moldings is difficult and expensive. What are these older homes like if we look beyond the high-end finishes and we just look at their bones? First, let's talk about efficiency, and let's really look at insulation. Get this, back in the day, they literally used whatever they had on hand for insulation. There was no insulation you could buy at the store, so they used what they had. So we're talking old newspapers, sawdust, and I've even crawled up in an attic and found straw before. Can you imagine? Not only were these materials terrible at keeping heat in, but they were also highly flammable, so it's no wonder there were so many house fires back then. Today, we're using fiberglass, foam, or even eco-friendly options that are safer, way more effective, and way less flammable. If you are looking at an older home in the winter, here's a good tip for you. Feel the top of the wall versus the bottom of the wall. If it has insulation at all, you'll often find the top of the wall is a lot colder because that insulation is settled throughout the years. Again, that's if there was insulation at all. Wood and fuel were cheaper back then, so energy efficiency was just not too much of a concern. Do you remember the old movies where they'd go to bed underneath 7 covers, they wore full pajamas, and they slept with a nightcap? That's because it was cold outside, and if it was cold outside, it was cold inside back then as well. Next, let's talk about windows. Windows are one of the most notorious places we lose heat in a house. So, have you ever stood by an old window in the winter and you could feel that chill coming off of it? That's not good if you're trying to keep the heat bill down, but that used to be normal. Homes used to have single pane windows, which is an upgrade from wax paper used in even older homes. Older homes often have these thin windows, which are practically an open invitation for your really expensive heat to escape right outside. There's a reason people used to sleep with sleeping caps and long pajamas and take the hot thing out of the fire and stick it underneath of their covers. It was cold in the house. Modern homes, on the other hand, they have double or triple glazed windows, and now you can look out the window at winter time, watching the snow come down, just like you're watching it on TV, standing there in your underwear. Now, if we're going to talk about how cold it is, let's talk about how hot it gets too. So you're going to want to have air conditioning. Old homes were not designed for air conditioning. They're going to have generally 9-foot or 10-foot ceilings. That was for all the heat to go up in the summer. By the 1950s, you start seeing ceilings come down because they were trying to keep the cool air down on our level. So keep in mind, even if you have a great air conditioner, that air is not going to necessarily go where you want it to because it's not designed for that. You do get large porches on the front, and that was so you could escape the heat of the house. There used to be sleeper porches. Houses used to get so hot at night that they would actually go outside and sleep. People would sleep in parks. They would sleep on the sleeper porches of their house if you had a nice enough house to afford a sleeper porch, because inside the house would get so hot. Again, you add air conditioning to it. Yes, it works, but you've got a higher head ceiling to work with, and it's not as efficient as what they found when they started building houses in the 1950s, and air conditioning became part of central air, and they were designed for it. Charming, yes, they're charming, but efficient, not so much. Modern homes have streamlined energy efficient zone systems. They can save you a fortune on energy bills. If you live in Kansas City, you know recently that Evergy has changed the way that we are billed for our energy. So energy efficiency is on everybody's mind right now. And of course, older homes are going to cost a lot more. How much more, I don't know, but definitely more. Next, let's talk about safety. And here's a scary thought. That old charming house might have the original wiring still in it, complete with cloth insulation. And guess what? That cloth has probably dried out by now, especially if it's been baking in an attic for 100 years. Now, this isn't just an electrical hazard, but it's a serious fire risk. We often see that the electric panel and all the exposed wires in the basement and what we can see in the attic have been replaced, but replacing all the wires inside the walls and hard to reach areas can be expensive. So we also commonly find that some of the old wiring still exists in these areas. So it's something you definitely want to watch out for. And if you're living in a home that's built before the 1970s, be aware of lead-based paint and asbestos. These were the go-to materials back then. Lead additives made paint last a lot longer. It was an expensive paint, so you'll generally find it on the more expensive homes. But remember, it's often the high-end homes that are still standing today, so lead-based paint chips are probably going to be common. Lead-based paint chips and the dust they produce can cause lead poisoning. Long-term exposure is just as damaging as acute exposure, as the body stores lead forever. Coming from an era where house fires were common, asbestos was marketed as fireproof. And it is fireproof, but we now know that it's not exactly great for our health. And like lead-based paint dust, asbestos dust has fibers that causes a host of lung problems, including scarring and even mesothelioma. Now, the charm of old homes definitely comes with challenges. Older homes were built often with what materials were locally sourced. I've seen foundations built with used railroad ties in older railroad homes here in Missouri. I've seen foundations built with local sandstone, rocks from the creeks, the small rocks that shouldn't have been used for foundations, but it's what they had on site. But I've also seen precisely fitted stone by masons. Again, homes that have survived longer than 100 years often have been well maintained and have had higher quality materials used, but we still see both, so you definitely want to keep an eye out. Older does not always mean better, but again, a lot of the older stuff that's still standing is really nice. Now, compared to using the rocks you found in the creek or the railroad ties you salvaged before they went to the dump, concrete foundations of today have reinforced steel to keep the concrete from shifting and are generally drier, allowing these areas to be finished living area as well without too much concern of mold. Keep in mind, most of the old stone houses, they don't generally have great grading and they're not sealed up watertight, so mold is always a concern. It doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous mold, but you know, that smell of an old library book, it's generally coming from the moisture that's in an old house basement. Now, the next thing is my least favorite, and it's plumbing problems. What's that smell? Now, plumbing in a home is one of my least favorite parts of homeownership because if there's one thing to know about owning a home, it's that water ruins everything. Rusty pipes, lead pipes, cast iron drains, clay tile sewer lines are all common in these older homes. They're hidden in the walls and they're buried in the yard, so you can't always see them. There are ways we can inspect, but we can't always see everything. So no matter what you do, there's a chance you open up a wall, you have a problem, you find out there's going to be one of those types of pipes hidden behind the wall. No way around it. These are projects that are never exciting to take on, and you won't see these on HGTV shows. Today's modern homes, while lacking in the use of old growth woods and having highly skilled trim carpenters that can painstakingly hand coat crown moldings, they offer a lot of big advantages in terms of everyday safety and energy savings. Every year, stringent codes are updated, creating a better and better product. Builders today use far greater precision in their construction as they work with engineered lumber that doesn't warp, sheathing and OSB flooring that doesn't creak when you walk on it, and I-beam joists that don't settle and sag like the old wood beams in the past. 100-year-old homes have character that the new homes shouldn't ever have, like funhouse sloping floors, again, because the I-beams don't sag over time. Insulation is the same way. It's precise and it's meant to minimize all air infiltration. Houses today can be so airtight that air exchangers are installed so that you can close the door. Imagine that, having a house that's so sealed up that you can't close the door unless you open a window, and that's basically what these do. They allow a little bit of pressure to come off so the door can close. Heating and cooling systems are even more efficient than ever before as well, offering homeowners unprecedented comfort levels while saving them money on energy bills. So older homes, you're going to have certain homes in the house that are going to feel drafty. This one room is going to be colder than another room, but newer houses, they've got it worked out. They have cold air returns. They're designed to make the house evenly heat. It's just one of the benefits of having a newer house. And again, I'm a nostalgic. I love antiques. I love old homes and I love old cars. I love the stories that come with the character. I've also, though, sold hundreds and hundreds of homes, and I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. So I think it's important to make all buyers aware of the pros and cons of any choice that they make. Every decade, homes have improved. Depending on the economy, there are periods where certain features or materials were changed. These are things you probably won't know unless you do this long enough. For instance, homes in the 1940s in Kansas City will have concrete block foundations that are not as good as poured concrete, primarily due to a supply chain issue with concrete as the world was rebuilding at the end of World War II. By the 1950s, stone foundations and concrete block foundations, they were gone, and poured reinforced concrete became the norm as many of the engineers in the military returned back to civilian life. They started concrete companies, and they took the skills that they learned building bunkers in World War II, brought it home, and we now have really great foundations. If you're a big fan of oak hardwood floors, you're going to love this because from about 1950 to the late 60s, oak hardwood flooring was standard. It wasn't until the late 60s when they started using engineered plywood because people loved shag carpet and they were tired of sweeping their floors all the time. The idea of vacuuming carpet was a big win. Nobody wanted to sweep their floors, and everybody pretty much covered over their hardwood floors from yesteryear with this new shag carpet. Fun fact, did you know that they actually sold rakes so you could keep your carpet looking fresh and it wouldn't lay down matte? The late 70s and early 80s, there was an energy crisis and we saw a decline in the average home size that was being built, and often builders would choose to cut corners to keep prices competitive. We've kind of seen that done the last few years. As materials went up, builders were finding ways they could cut corners. The same thing happened in the late 70s and the early 80s. So you have to watch out for things in those years like aluminum wiring, thinner concrete walls, smaller diameter copper lines, and they had some cheap windows that they would use during that time that did not hold up well. Now, by the end of the 80s, the economy was roaring again, so you'll find a lot of larger, high-quality built homes again, and this carries on through about 2008, when we see the next crash, and we don't really see new construction pick up again until about 2015 or so. So as you can see, the economy plays a big part in home quality and abundance. Even in areas such as Northeast Kansas City, you'll see large homes built between 1880 and about 1893. This was due to mass industrialization. The economy was roaring and people were moving from agricultural town to factories. The factory owners made a lot of money and they built big houses. Then in 1893, there was a severe crash known as the Panic of 1893. This meant that a lot of those empty lots continued to set empty until the economy started picking up again around 1910. But 1917, we enter World War I, and you don't see housing pick up again until the 1920s, where we built a lot of the Brookside homes and those types of neighborhoods. But the rarest of homes is homes built in the 1930s, again, because of the Great Depression. Often homes that were built during this time were built of a very poor quality, and they likely do not exist anymore. I do see them every once in a while, or they were owned by people who were just significantly not affected by the Depression, and they had the financial ability to build a high-quality home even when nobody else could. So the uber rich could still build homes when nobody else could. It's basically what I'm getting at. Now, there's no secret here. Older homes do require a lot more work for maintenance than newer homes, and no matter what you do, they will never be as efficient or as comfortable as a newer home. They'll never be as safe. For instance, if you look at a home built before 1950, most of those two-story homes are built with balloon framing. That means that the board on the outside, if it was 25 foot from the foundation to the top of the house, that's one board all the way up. They build the whole outside of the house, and then they'd come on the inside and they would build the floors. The problem with this is that if a fire happens, it goes right up that wall, it follows that gap in the wall, and goes right up to the second story. Today we use platform framing, which means you have an 8-foot or a 10-foot stud, and then you build the next floor on top of that, you build up again and build on top of that. But back then they would use a 30-foot board to go all the way to the top, and it would become a fire chase. So on top of that, newer homes are going to fit today's lifestyle. Finding a place for a 70-inch TV or that double-headed shower that you want, that 8-seat island in the kitchen, it may require a major remodel, including removing walls and taking on a very expensive and major project. A lot of times I show houses and people say, I'm going to knock this wall over, I'm going to do that. They generally don't ever get around to doing it. I resell that house for them a few years later, and then they buy a newer house if that's the style that they want. It's not always easy to retrofit an old house to meet modern living. Make sure that you're okay with taking on a project and you have the budget to do it and the willpower to do it, because none of that's as fun as it is on TV. Now, older homes are great for those who are nostalgic and they just love the character, but newer homes are definitely better for people who don't want to work on their house when they get home. I don't think, though, I could ever talk a lover of older homes into appreciating the efficiency and simplicity of owning a new home, and I'd also never talk a buyer of a new home into taking on the uncertainty of an older home. But I do want to make sure that all of our clients have a clear understanding of what they're getting into and let them do their own due diligence, making the best decision for them. There's no right or wrong answer, just the right answer for you. I'm Justin Berry with Plains Paris Real Estate, and if you're even thinking of making a move in the Kansas City area, you'd like an expert to be in the trenches with you, that's what we do. We are here to point out what you might not know to look for and be your trusted agent through one of the most stressful times in your life. Simply reach out to us, call, text, email, whatever's best for you. Our number is 816-439-8705. Our team is comprised of full-time agents, and we are here to help make you confident in your decisions and help you make smart moves in real estate. Again, I'm Justin Berry. Reach out immediately at 816-439-8705. Look forward to talking to you soon.